This was kind of spur of the moment, so that's why my hair is, and my face is. I have both criticism and praise of feminism, to be honest. Like, it's obviously not a perfect movement. On the whole, I think feminism is a good thing. I am a feminist, but obviously there are subgroups within the feminist umbrella that sort of give us a bad name. I don't really know how to jump into this, so I'm just gonna go for it. Feminism is just for women. This is not true. So, predominantly, feminism currently focuses on women because the movement is mostly made up of women. A small proportion of men in general are feminists. But we do care and we want to be fighting for men's issues. Here is proof of that. I tweeted 2 polls the other week. Do you care about the struggles of men? Out of 7,271 people, 89% said yes. A follow-up poll with 7,111 votes. If yes, are you a feminist? 88% said yes. The sample size here was over 7,000 people. I think it's fair to conclude that the majority of feminists do care about men's issues, but it's hard to fight with you or fight for you when you're fighting against us so much. If you make a video saying you're a feminist, you get death threats, you get rape threats, you get video responses made where they tear apart every single little thing you say. And like, you can't expect us to experience that and then decide to focus our movement on what you're going through. That's just not reasonable. In conclusion, we want to be helping you and we want to be fighting for men's issues, but it's hard to do, especially because like you won't talk to us about what's going wrong. Here's an analogy. So like, imagine there's like an illness affecting everyone, but in different ways according to their gender. Women have started trying to create like a medicine for it. They're talking about their symptoms and they're figuring things out, and then the men in the group are getting really angry and like throwing stuff at us and being like, why doesn't your medicine help us too? And we're like, well, we want it to, but like, what are your symptoms? And they're like, ah, and they won't cooperate. So we can't help them with our medicine, but we want to. That's the analogy I'm going for. Someone's probably going to be offended by that. Okay. Also, oh well, if it's supposed to be for both genders, then why is it called feminism? Once I see you campaigning to get mankind changed to like humanity and manpower changed to human power, and like all the diagrams of evolution being changed to something a little bit less manly looking so that everything is completely gender neutral, then we'll think about changing the name of the movement. I think all of those points are just ridiculous. Like, I think a good question to ask is, why are you uncomfortable associating yourself with something that sounds like it's for women? I really am not good at segues, so I'm just sort of plowing through. Feminism oppresses men. First of all, linking back to these polls, feminists don't hate men, feminists don't like want men to die or whatever, although I can see why people would think that, because there are, like I said earlier, like subgroups of feminism that are just so counterproductive, like, oh, male tears, I hate men. It's like, it's about equality, and you're not helping. This belief that feminism is oppressing men stems from the gender perception gap. Here's an article from inthes.com. Gina Davis Institute for Gender in Media found that in crowd scenes, women tend to comprise about 17% of any given crowd. She's argued, based on outside data and her own interpretation, that this imbalance relates to and reinforces the way men perceive the actual number of women in any given room. If there's 17% women, the men in the groups think it's 50-50, because that's like the norm and that's what they're used to, so that feels equal to them. And if there's 33% women, the men perceive that as there being more women in the room than men. Here's another bit from that article. Also, while there's a persistent stereotype that women are more talkative than men, women actually tend to talk less than men in classroom discussions, professional contexts, and even romantic relationships. In seminars and debates, when women and men are deliberately given an equal amount of the highly valued talking time, there is often a perception that women are getting more than their fair share. So essentially, all of the norms that we have in place in society are perceived by men as being equal. We're so used to women being less present. Now that we're working up to being equal, it feels to men like we're like encroaching on their space and we're like oppressing them, essentially, which, yeah. I completely understand that men face issues because they're men. Male victims of abuse are much less likely to be believed. There's a stigma around men showing emotion. There are body image standards that men have to meet in the same way that there are body image standards that women are supposed to meet. The gender imbalance is affecting everyone, essentially. But women aren't the oppressed group. fair, yes they are. Politically, in the entire world, out of over like 200 countries, only 2 countries have a government made up of 50% or more women. So every country in the world, except for 2, has a government that is predominantly men. There has never been a female president in America. There has been 1 female prime minister in the UK, and that did not go well. She wasn't a great start. In the USA, only 19% of the government is women. In the UK, it's 29%. So politically, we are completely underrepresented, and it's not because women don't go for those jobs. Socially, women are shamed for being sexual. They're called sluts and whores. But then if they don't have sex with people, they're called prudes. They can't win. Women comprise 33% of the speaking characters in top 110 grossing films. 33% of all speaking characters. That's not very many. Like, that's nowhere near 50%. So we're underrepresented yet again. 70% of women have experienced some form of violence from an intimate partner. Women are catcalled and harassed in the streets. We can't go out at night unless we've got all these like procedures in order to like make sure that we're safe. Everything is just like a bit more dangerous for us, like we're just at risk more of the time. Obviously men experience violence from women, but it's way less common. If you're angry about anything, you don't get taken seriously. You're called irrational, or they tell you you're on your period. There's so much casual sexism. And the thing is, men don't notice these things because sexism nowadays isn't like a conscious thought. It's not like I hate women. It's an internalized set of beliefs and values that have been conditioned into us from a very young age. So you might not think you're sexist, and that's fair enough, but like we all are a little bit. Like even women, there's so much internalized misogyny. I was reading my diary from when I was like 11 and I was calling people like sluts and whores. Sexism is a lot more subtle now, and the people who notice it are the ones who experience it and the ones who listen to those who experience it. Economically, there are more men named John in CEO positions than there are women. Also, the gender pay gap. People keep trying to say that the gender pay gap isn't a real thing because like it's illegal to pay a woman less for the same job than a man. However, the gender pay gap isn't really referencing that anymore. The average amount that women make is, in the UK, 77% of what men make on average, and this is because it's much harder for women to get hired into higher paying jobs than it is for men. Women are steered towards lower paying jobs like teachers and social workers. Men are encouraged to go after big, high-powered jobs with suits and briefcases and all of those things. Plus which, here's another uncomfortable fact. When women enter fields in greater numbers, pay declines for the very same jobs that men were doing before. That's my 2 cents on the pay gap. But what about manual labour? Oh, okay. First of all, every time I see a feminist talking about women not being given higher paying jobs, there is always someone that goes, yeah, well, why aren't they working in the sewers? Like, it's a fair point to argue that women aren't fighting for equality in like manual labour jobs like working in construction or something like that. But here's the thing. First of all, lots of women are trying to get those jobs. Here is a quote from an actual person, like genuinely, this was on a forum. All of these things I'll leave links to in the description, by the way. As someone who supervises and hires people for manual labour, I can definitely say that gender plays a part in who gets hired into roles that require raw strength. This is for several reasons. Women are more likely to quit or refuse the assignment. I don't know how true that is. I mean, fair enough. Women are more likely to fail to meet performance standards and more likely to be injured. There are other jobs available that we can hire women into, jobs that require dexterity rather than strength. So essentially, women don't get hired into these jobs. They get turned away because they're considered to be more of a liability. Here are some thoughts from someone on the other side of this issue. As a woman who has actually worked in some of these manual labour positions, the way you're treated really isn't great. Generally you get one of 2 types of treatment. 1, you become sort of weird team mascot, which breeds simultaneous special treatment and not being taken seriously. 2, constant litany of how you need to lighten up or you aren't much fun and you're not used to being around men, are you? And a general idea that you must be an uptight bitch when you fail to have a crack-brained smile plastered on your face for every dude within 20 feet of you. So essentially what she's saying is, as a woman in this industry, you don't get taken seriously or treated with respect. Plus which, here's an article from stormlinegear.com feminism.com. We polled more than 1,000 women to find their attitudes to working in traditionally male-dominated industries such as commercial fishing. Only 15% said the unpleasant conditions associated with the job would put them off. Here are the actual reasons in order. 1. Macho atmosphere. 2. Safety. 3. Patronizing male colleagues. 4. Unpleasant working conditions. 5. Low pay. 6. Boring work. 7. Unattractive wording on adverts. So that's an issue of gender discrimination once again. Like, it's not a good point to make. It's always used as a way to divert attention away from the fact that women aren't getting into jobs that are paid higher. Another thing that I see quite a lot is, I'm not a feminist, but I believe in equality, that's why I'm an egalitarian. Egalitarianism is a social and political movement that has been inactive for a really long time. I have never seen a single piece of activism associated with egalitarianism. It is usually just used as a way to say that you support gender equality without having to call yourself a feminist. It's a very broad concept, it's just about equality in general, and we need specific ones to pinpoint issues and help solve them, because if you just say, I believe in equality, and don't pinpoint specific issues, then you're not going to get anywhere and you're not going to make any real change. Yeah, it's essentially just used as a way to oppose feminism, which I really don't appreciate. The discussion on gender in general is just very unpleasant. As soon as someone says something about gender, regardless of which side they're on, the people listening feel like victimized and attacked and say mean things in response, and there's just so much unnecessary aggression and hatred, and like, just, we're never gonna get anywhere unless we can all start to be more respectful and polite. So yeah, anyway, thanks for watching. Please don't yell at me. Bye. Lol.